What is going on, guys? Today we have a very interesting video. So the stock market has been very crazy recently, and it's up and down, and earnings are only making it more and more crazy. And what's interesting to me is there's been a lot of positive earnings over the last week and last few days that have really not have had a huge effect on the market. The market's still going down. Today we finally had a green day, and it barely went up because there's such a large mix of people right now that are looking at the market and looking at different companies and saying, well, this one's reporting bad, this one's reporting good. And we're going to just step back and take a look at some of these huge companies that have reported earnings the last couple days and what that really means for the market. Specifically, we're going to look at Facebook, we're going to look at Microsoft, we're going to look at Google, and we're going to look at Visa. I think these are all, big, huge market caps. They all have a certain, place in the market that tells, where the overall economy's at. And we're going to basically just take a look at that and see what we kind of think is going on and what is actually happening with the economy. That's the real question. Is the economy actually in as bad a shape as people believe? So that's what we're going to take a look at, and we're going to try and figure out today. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. So overall, again, we're going to take a quick look at the market. So this is the SPY, S&P 500. And what we're seeing, today is a little over 0.25% up in the market. But over the last 5 days, we've seen the continued volatility. So Thursday and Friday, we saw that huge drop in the market. Monday, we actually saw, a spike up. Overall, things, kind of turning around or looking like they were turning around. And then Tuesday, we saw the market fall all the way back down. So a lot of just volatility. I believe a lot of this came on the back of Google and some earnings there, and then it's been kind of sideways and a little bit up obviously today. So overall, just been a very hectic market for the last week. So first up, we're going to look at Meta Platforms or Facebook stock. And this one is a very interesting play. So they've been beaten down quite a bit, even over the last kind of month or two. They were well over $200. You could see well over even $300, and then kind of had bad earnings, bad things kind of going on in the company, and it sent the stock way low. And just today, they were down another 3.32%, but after hours, they announced, and they had a huge beat on EPS, a small miss on revenue, and the stock has gone skyrocketing over 18% just after hours, $31 to over $206 per share. So this is very interesting, and it's very interesting to see because Facebook, they run obviously advertisements for companies. They run advertisements on their apps like Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, things like that. So for them to have such a strong earnings is overall a positive sign for the economy. It means more advertisers are spending more money on Facebook to reach their customers. And they're not going to want to reach customers if customers aren't buying. So clearly customers are still buying in the market, and people are still, selling products and selling large amounts of products. So overall, it's very interesting that the market is still down and there's still a lot of negativity, even though something like Facebook, that's been beaten down, had an overall very strong quarter. So it's interesting to look at, and we'll look at Google is kind of a comparable company here, but Google is another one that you'd expect to have a lot of advertising dollars and cloud space and things like that businesses are only going to use when things are doing really well. So Google is another tell, and we're going to look at that. But Google had a kind of a smaller miss in their earnings, and that kind of actually affected the market in a huge way to the negative side. But the question is, why isn't Facebook, having the same effect on the market? So Microsoft is the next one up here, and Microsoft overall, has had a very good positive last couple of days. So they announced their earnings, and the stock again also spiked up similar to Facebook. So they were down around 270, spiked up to 285, and then kind of continued that trend throughout the day, and then kind of pulled back a little bit to a 283 level. And they didn't really have anything surprising. They only beat by around 1% on EPS, and then less than 1% on revenue. So nothing really crazy going on here. But overall, the market liked their positivity and their earnings, not really having a whole lot of issues with it. I think a lot of these companies have announced continued buybacks. I don't remember if Microsoft was one of them. I haven't had time to actually watch their conference call, but it's interesting, to see Microsoft again have such a positive day, but the overall market still be down negative. So we're going to come back, to this one and Facebook at the end and kind of address my opinion on what's causing this differentiation between the overall market and some of these companies that are actually, spiking back up and having positive earnings. So Google's next up here, and as I mentioned, they had a miss on EPS. So you can see down here they missed by 3.61%. So a relatively decent miss. And overall, they announced, after hours on Tuesday, and this is kind of what you're seeing. So they spiked down in there on the news of their miss. And it's very interesting here, looking at Google, the fact that, they are different than Facebook. So Facebook, is very focused on ads, where Google, has some focus on ads. Well, they also have, their cloud space and other things like that. But it's interesting, because these companies are obviously spending money on ads, but they must not be spending money on other things that would help Google capitalize. YouTube ads, it would be interesting to be a creator right now and actually be, earning money from YouTube and see how that money has aligned over the last couple months, because I wonder if that's high, but the other aspects of Google are relatively low. But overall, I think this is kind of a discrepancy that's interesting to see. I mean, they're down 11.5% in the last 5 days, which is crazy move for Google. I mean, Google, it's just been beaten down over and over again. So last one we have up here is Visa, and Visa is huge because you still have PayPal left to, I think PayPal might report today, right now after hours, they might be reporting, but PayPal and MasterCard, they report. MasterCard, I believe, reports on Thursday, so tomorrow, I think it's after hours if I remember right. But basically, should be very telling for their earnings as well. If things kind of continue and they match the trend, they should have positive earnings as well. But Visa is up. You can see almost 6.5% today, and then another percent after hours. And all of that is coming on the back of a very positive earnings. So they were down to $200, and then it spiked all the way up to $218, and then kind of leveled off down here now to $214. And that comes on the back of 8.39% beat on EPS, and then a 5.38% beat on revenue. So that is massive. Those are two huge beats on both revenue and EPS. And that's really crazy. So this should be another tell to the market. You're looking at a company like Visa, which, right, they're making their money by people spending money. And what this tells you is that money velocity is still high in the economy, right? You still have a ton of consumers who are spending a lot of money, and thus obviously Visa is doing well. And it will be interesting, I would expect that MasterCard has a similar trend and PayPal should have a similar trend to this. But overall, Visa is, I think they have 50% market cap on card usage, on credit cards. So it's insane that, they should be a very clear tell to the market and to everyone that overall the economy is still in good shape in terms of people actually spending money and companies, bringing in revenue and EPS. So let's just wrap everything together and put it in a package here and figure out what's actually going on with the market. So there's kind of two things going on with the market, and the one I've mentioned many times, and that is just the overall negativity of the market. So overall, the market is, just in a bad mindset where the majority of people, I guarantee if you poll them right now, they would assume that the market is going to be lower in a month, in 6 months, in even a year than it is right now. I would guarantee that over 50% of people are thinking that right now. And that is going to obviously have a weight on the market because people are more willing to sell. So there's more people selling. And once you get to a point where there's, a lot of those people are done selling or they don't have anything left to sell, that's really when you're going to start to see this turnaround. It's very good news for people who are always buyers, who are basically constantly bullish, that we're seeing numbers like this, because Visa, Microsoft, Google, even though Google missed, but you're still in a good position even if you own those shares. Google was over $3,000 I believe at one point, and they're down close to 2,000. So you're still buying at a huge discount. The PE ratio is super low. There's all these companies that are in very good shape, and if you're just a constant buyer in the market, you're going to be in a good position in the long run. But right now, there's no telling of when the bottom is, because nobody really knows, where all the money's at, what money's on the sidelines, what money can still come into the market, what money is still planned to come out of the market, because there are still going to be, people who are sellers who are, getting, more and more worried over time that eventually are going to sell out. And there's still people who are going to buy into the market. So you still have both sides. The question is, when is that flip going to happen? When are there going to become more buyers than there are sellers? And personally, I don't really see that. I think the biggest thing that needs to happen is people need to become more confident in small caps. Small caps have had a lot of, decimation over the last few months. And overall, I think that's had a lot of weight on the market. And, overall, I think that's kind of crept into these large caps, especially as some of these macro issues, things with Russia, inflation, everything kind of going on. All that has continued to weigh on these large caps. And it just originally, the inflation and some of these other fears originally had a huge weight on the small caps and drove them down, and that just added more and more and more weight onto the market. So I think once we see a switch flip with the small caps, we'll start seeing the market overall start to trend up. I couldn't tell you when that's going to be. I think once there's more certainty as to what the Fed is going to do with inflation, with inflation basically, and with raising rates, I think the market will become a little bit more certain in how things are going to move forward. Right now, there's so many different numbers thrown out there. Are there going to be 2 rate hikes? Are there going to be 4 rate hikes? Are there going to be 6 rate hikes? There's kind of so many different things, and all the Federal Reserve members, they're all kind of on different pages. So no one really knows who to listen to right now, and there isn't really a clear message from them. I think once that gets cleared up and things become more evident of, this is the path forward, I think that's when things will start to turn around. And really, I think in May, you could start to see signs of that, because what you could start seeing in May is we're going to start comparing inflation numbers against high inflation numbers from a year ago. And that should drive down inflation. So right now we're at like 8%. When we start comparing against numbers that are already high, we could see those numbers fall down. We could see probably 4 to 6% would be, my projection for May. And I think overall the market could react very positively to that. And I think that could have an overarching, good message going forward. So that's kind of the first big thing or the next big thing that I could see happening in a month or so that could have a positive effect. Other than that, I couldn't tell you. Honestly. Your guess would be as good as mine to what will start, flip that turnaround and start the market going in the right direction. So not a whole lot of answers right now. Nobody really knows what's going on. I mean, if you're a constant buyer like myself, it doesn't really matter. Just keep buying the stocks that you love and at a more and more discounted price. And in the long term, you're going to be good, honestly. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. As always, have a wonderful rest of your day.